First up, let me invite Mrin Agarwal, who's a financial educator and director at FinSafe India. Hi, Mrin. Thanks very much for joining in. The last 2 years have seen any number of NFOs, right? I mean, this year already, 50 NFOs have been launched. A big number of thematic funds are coming out. I mean, you name it, and it seems like there is a fund there: business cycle, quant, EV, blockchain, semiconductor, whatnot. Why this interest in thematic funds?
So good afternoon, Samara, and congratulations on the 22 years. And it feels really nice and special to be here today as CNBC is celebrating its 22 years.
Thank you.
Well, as far as thematic funds are concerned, I think, what happens with thematic funds is always that most of these NFOs come out at market peaks. And these ideas look very good at this point in time. What is surprising to me is that these funds have about 1.36 lakh crores, and they're actually number 5 among all the categories, right? So there's a fair amount of money going there, and I think it's mainly the complete market euphoria that you see at this point in time, and people feel that these newer ideas will actually make a lot more money, and that's why you see a lot of interest in these funds.
But, how has been the performance? If I'm not wrong, these are amongst the most expensive funds. And to my mind, it seems like, because after the recategorization, you can only have so many number of funds, that this thematic fund is like this blank check, right? I mean, innovate, launch NFOs, and notch up the AUM too.
Yeah, well, the performance has been really wavering. I mean, if you look at different sectors, like 2017 was the year of infrastructure funds. Then 2018, 2019, it was technology funds. Last year, it was healthcare and pharmaceutical themes that did well. And this year, it's been technology and infrastructure again. So the theme seems to change every year. And again, there are times when funds do not even remain after a point in time. So if you remember a couple of years back, you had all these Resurgent India Fund, Reform India Fund, and a lot of these funds, they were close-ended firstly, and they basically got merged with some other existing funds. They had terrible performance. So the category does not really stack up very well. Also, you mentioned about costs. Certainly the costs are higher. An average thematic fund cost is about 2.15% compared to a flexi-cap fund, which is probably 0.75 to 1% lower. And very importantly, volatility is very high. So if you look at the large cap category, the average volatility on a rolling return basis over the last 3 years is 15, whereas that for this category is 20. So volatility is pretty high as well in this category.
That's true, actually, Mrin. So volatility is higher, expenses are higher. But the other thing is that the fact is that there are just too many thematic funds which are now existing. And, for an investor, it's just adding to the confusion, right? For any one theme, there would be, 3 or 4 different kinds of funds, 3 EV funds, NFOs, for example, different strategies. What should investors look out for when they're selecting a thematic fund?
Well, firstly, remember that thematic funds do not provide diversification, and they're very concentrated in nature, which means that they're going to be volatile and you might lose capital. So that's point number 1. Also, I think there are some good, interesting themes that are there. But in order to invest into this theme, I think you need to first look at whether this theme is sustainable and durable. Are there enough companies available in this theme? Like when you look at the whole clean energy space itself, are there enough companies? And, again, are these companies going to be sustainable? And is the fund choosing the right security? So, I have seen a lot of thematic funds which just end up choosing certain momentum stocks, right? And more importantly, always, as with any investment, you need to assess what happens if the theme does not materialize. Like, I think last year you had a lot of healthcare themes, and look at how healthcare has done this year, right? So more importantly, Are you entering at right valuations? Like, for example, when you look at the EV funds, they do have some of the very large stocks like Tesla and Nvidia, most of them, right? And valuations in these are pretty high. So given the valuation, what is going to be the growth aspects? More importantly, with a lot of themes, and especially if there are newer things like blockchain or EV, you do also need to keep a check on the government policies and the advancement in technology as well.
Yeah, just too many moving parts, right? I mean, at least for now. But, Mrin, I mean, most people or advisors would say that, it's okay if you want to put 5-10% allocation to thematic funds. But considering that there are so many NFOs that are being sold or marketed so aggressively now, there is this danger that people will exceed this 5 to 10%, right? So how do they manage the thematic allocation of their portfolio?
So the first thing is no close-ended funds. You should have the ability to exit whenever you want to. I think you should identify 2 to 3 themes, and these should be on the basis that you are not going to find these stocks in the diversified portfolios, right? And be ready to, of course, lose money out here. For example, you need to keep a check on the performance of this. So you need to monitor these funds more than what you would monitor funds for core allocation like flexi-cap funds. And you need to have the ability to swiftly exit if, either way. So you do need to have a trigger for exit, because most of these funds are very difficult to benchmark. Like, let's say you have 2-3 different themes. Again, you cannot benchmark it against the category, right? So given that it's a little difficult to benchmark these funds, you really need to have like a stop loss and a trigger to exit, and you need to be able to exit swiftly. And finally, let's say you have a couple of themes and now you like something else. Well, you will have to look at ensuring that you are only in 2 to 3 themes, and you'll have to look at exiting something before you invest into a new one. So I think the key thing is not to fall for everything that's coming, not to fall for the narrative, but to really look at themes which you're not finding in the other portfolios, and then look at exiting it, monitoring it, and exiting it swiftly.
Mrin, do you personally recommend thematic funds when you're drawing up portfolios with your clients? Because, it seems to me that it's more work than it's actually worth. And, even if this fund was to become all that and more, it's just 5% of your portfolio. So how much will it move the needle in terms of overall returns?
For all the reasons that you mentioned, actually, we don't recommend it unless, as I said, there's something really new that you're not getting anywhere else. Then yes, maybe, but I really haven't found that. Maybe we'll have to wait and watch what this blockchain funds and what some of these newer ones are all about. But as of now, not really.
Okay, if somebody was to look at this whole thematic or sectoral allocation, besides just the fact that, they're more volatile, anything else they can keep in mind in terms of, when they're trying to fit it in with the rest of their portfolio, which could be, say, a flexi cap, large cap, whatever, anything else which sort of optimizes the portfolio?
See, this is a tactical allocation call, right? So it's not meant for core financial goals. It is a tactical call. And I think that's the way you need to manage it, right? And it's something you do because you believe that it has a lot of potential. The other thing I would say is that specifically if you're getting into things like blockchain, and I'm not recommending you to get into it, but I'm just saying that in cases like this, please try and understand what this is all about. What are the different types of holdings that are there? So when I looked at one of the funds which is into crypto, for example, it basically had crypto platforms, right? So you have to see very carefully what the holdings are. And actually, I would say don't get into the NFO. Wait for a while, let the portfolio get constructed, and then look at it once the portfolio is constructed, because then you have a better idea of the holdings.
Mrin, just one final question. How important is it to align, the thematic funds in your portfolio with the prevailing business cycle? Because for themes and businesses, that becomes important, right? So is there like an ideal holding period?
No, there isn't. And which is why I said that you basically need to look at exiting. You need to have a number at which you're going to exit. And I think that's the best way to handle it, because if you're going to think that this is for the long term and I'm going to hold it for the long term, it may not really happen that way. So you need to be ready to exit it. If it's done very well as well, then no harm in doing some profit booking. But if it's not working out, it's a good idea to exit. And I really think the case in point is all of these Resurgent India and these Reform India funds, which had come 3 to 4 years back. You had all this rural theme and all of these funds, and none of these have really worked out. So I think it's important to have the exit strategy in mind very clearly.
Yeah, so on a macro level, the theme may have worked out, but for some reason, it's not translated into the fund. All right, Mrind, thank you very much.